Here's the problem. We tend to remember what happens first and last most, and we might spend some time thinking about the beginning of our meeting and how we want to kick things off and the purpose, but very rarely do we have enough time and prep in real life to think about how we end or wrap up a meeting. And yet, how we wrap up a meeting shapes the energy that people enter the next meeting. They shape whether or not people want to come back to the next one. They create and form the memorable culture of our meetings. In my experience, meetings that I haven't designed or led tend to end in one of two dominant ways. Either twiddling thumbs like, so, okay, I think we're done here. Is there anything else? Just like a little fizzle. Or they end in a rush that's like, we gotta schedule the next one, we're not done, what's the deadline? And then that's how we show up to our next meeting, in a rush and feeling stressed out, etc. By the end of watching this video, you will have, I'd say 80 to 85% of what you need to be a pro at wrapping up any meeting, even if you are not the leader of the meeting, which is sometimes the challenging part, is you're not the host of the meeting, so how do you possibly tell other people how to end a meeting? I'm Chad. I get to help make group connection and engagement easy for a living with some of the coolest leaders and educators on the planet. And in this video, I'm excited to share 5 really concrete exercises that will allow you to close a meeting on a high rather than a low. Let's get into it. Closing should be memorable, so I want to make this video memorable. And so for these 5 exercises, we're actually going to do them in 5 different locations. So the first one, if you slowly write out the word question, or do you say the T? Question. The first 5 letters of that word spell quest. And so this has actually formed one of my favorite exercise ideas, which I have been calling Question Quest. And so if you want to close a meeting on a high and continue momentum afterward, I would invite you to take 2 minutes at the end of your meeting to invite the group to create their own antenna. And what I mean by that is come up with a question that based on the meeting they just had, they're curious to know more about, or they feel like they could, should, or need to know a little bit more about. It could be a question for clients, it could be a question for internal staff, it could be a question for themselves, but the idea is, mentor of mine used to say that the best way to kill a question is with an answer. And so the idea here is that you send people on a question quest. You invite them to take 2 minutes to come up with a question that they want to ask on repeat to collect multiple answers and perspectives from before their next meeting. They write that down on a note card, they stick it in their pocket, maybe put it on their corkboard, dashboard, keyboard, surfboard, I don't care what kind of board, put it on a 2x4 if you want to. The idea is that they take this question with them to carry on the learning after the meeting. The second exercise and second location, I'm actually going to send you to Germany to a really beautiful human being and experience designer named Romy, who's going to walk you through this really cool closing exercise, which she emailed me about and said, oh, isn't this cool? And I said, yes. Can you share it with people? So she shared the T model, and a good closing exercise is concrete. So this is especially good if you're virtual because they'll have this prop accessible, most likely, but you invite the person or your group to go grab a teacup, T-E-A cup. TEA, all capitals, because our thoughts influence our emotions, which shape our actions. And so I'm gonna let Romy explain the rest of this exercise from Germany, right here.
Hi everyone, I'm Romy, so nice to meet you. Thank you so much, Chad, for the opportunity to share one of my favorite online closing activities. So today we're gonna talk all about the T model. T stands for thoughts, emotions, and actions. This comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, that basically says if we really want to make behavior change, we need to be focusing on these 3 aspects: our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions, because they're so interconnected and intertwined. So one of my favorite ways to bring this model in is to ask participants to go and grab a teacup from their space, from their house. One, it gives a nice moment to step away from the screen, move and stretch those bodies a little bit, but also always fun to see lots of colorful teacups come up on screen. So what I often like to do is play some nice background music and give time and space for all the participants to actually write out on pieces of paper different thoughts, emotions, or actions that could be empowering and supportive for them as they move forward in whatever intention they want to make or change they want in their life. So for example, if I was doing a session on self-care, a thought I might include might be, my work does not define my self-worth. Always something good to keep in mind. Could be an emotion, for example, focusing on curiosity versus judgment, and showing up with self-compassion when maybe I'm not taking enough care of myself during the week. And last but not least, an action that I might want to walk away with and be more intentional about is taking a walk in nature every day, or maybe calling a close friend to reconnect and really help support my own self-care that way. So you can ask participants to either pick one thought, one emotion, one action, read it out if it's a small group. Anyone who feels it resonates may take a little sip of their teacup, or you could always have people share in breakout rooms and chat. But whatever way you use this closing, make sure you always end with a nice cheers and a little virtual tea party on screen. I hope you enjoyed it, and good luck with your own tea parties.
Thank you, Romy. Time to go to activity number 3. I have named this exactly what I say to end a meeting like this. Ready? Don't clap, connect. Now this is something I experimented with in a little bit of a high-risk experiment 10 years ago when I first gave a TEDx talk. I was like, I want to do something different. I'm trying to challenge people to step outside of their comfort zone, take positive social risks. And so I can't just end the way that every other gathering ends. And so I ended by saying, don't clap. I would love for your applause to be the sounds of your voices continuing to connect as you go off to lunch. It was really weird to actually end the session because it's so normal to end particularly a bigger meeting or presentation or gathering with clapping. And so the third closing exercise is, particularly if you're leading or presenting, inviting the group to not clap and do something else as their applause. So lately, because my co-founder and partner in crime, Will Wise, passed away in November, we wrote the book Ask Powerful Questions together. And so I've been trying to think about what's the applause that would be useful to people, really memorable, meaningful, and a little bit of a hat tip to Will. And so I have been inviting people to not clap, but connect over one of 3 of Will's favorite questions. And I've been tossing out his 3 favorite questions. What brings you joy? What is this moment teaching you right now? And what is a crossroads you are at? And what about that is important? Can you imagine how much cooler that is than clapping with 500 people at a conference walking out of a room, all having a conversation about one of those questions? Way more substantial, way more meaningful, way more memorable. Closing exercise number 4 plays off of a embedded human norm, which is most of us have routines. One of my routines is I really like a child. I really like cereal in the morning, and like not healthy, nourishing cereals that help my day get better, like Lucky Charms, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, like Captain Crunch. That's kind of where I'm at. One of my rituals though, or one of the sounds involved in my rituals is I go in, this isn't my kitchen, but I grab a cereal bowl and I set it on the counter. Did you hear that sound as I set it down? It's part of the sound of my ritual. And so one of the ways I would invite you to close meetings is if you're in an intact established team that's meeting all the time and you want just a clean way to cut meetings, give yourselves a break rather than have meetings fizzle out, think of a sound that you want to have represent end. And so I've got this little bell. If I'm leading a virtual meeting or a session on how to make virtual engagement easy, session's over, right? Just a little sound, something to end it. It could be something a little bit more kinesthetic. You could every time you end a meeting, take an object from somewhere around you. Ooh, candy. I didn't expect to eat this candy. I probably shouldn't eat chocolate in the middle of a video. Take an object, throw it into the center of the room. That's probably a stupid one. Don't do that. The point is, create some little quick ritual that works for you and your culture and your organization. The 5th closing exercise, which is the way I just closed a meeting recently that was facilitating a session for 40 senior leaders in an accounting firm, top 10 accounting firm. This is a pretty serious group that kind of needs to make sure that things are purposeful and meaningful because their time is really precious. And I said, as a way of ending our meeting, I want to future-proof the time that we just spent here. And what I mean by that is I want to make sure that the last few hours that we've spent together are not only not a waste of time, but they're extremely valuable. And so what I'd like you to do is you've got some envelopes and letters, and I would love for you to write a letter to yourself. First learned this idea in high school. Mr. DeMello had us write a letter to ourselves 10 years in the future. Man, I was an idiot in high school. When I got that letter, I read it and it was like, oh, this is gonna be so cool, like reading a letter from 10 years in the past. It was the stupidest letter on the planet. But for this group of senior leaders or for your closing exercise, if you're ending a conference or an event or anything like that, how cool to say, hey, can you take one idea, instead of leaving with a notebook of ideas that you may or may not be able to implement on, can you write a letter to yourself in 6 months in the future with something, 1, 2, or maximum 3 things that you absolutely do not want to forget, that you want to remember, that you want to implement, that you want to be top of mind 6 months from now, that you know are valuable here, but you know when you get back to life, all the fires are going to come up and you might forget them. Can you write that down in a letter to yourself? Put your address on the envelope. And then I had all these leaders hand in these envelopes and they're sitting in a file in my desk at home, ready to be mailed off in snail mail 6 months from now. If you want to end in a memorable way, that's memorable then, and it's really memorable in 6 months when they get that letter, and it's quite likely to extend the impact of whatever you're doing. Now, this was the 5th location with the 5th exercise, but if you want to go to the 6th location, which is on a train leaving Boston after I facilitated a conference, you're going to want to watch this video on how to end a conference, where I share one of my absolute favorite exercises to do to wrap up a bigger event or conference where people have been together for a couple days. It's only 2 minutes and it's kind of an oldie but goodie. It's 4 years ago. You're going to see me 5 years in the past. See you on the train. Have an awesome day.